The hardest part about the sport has got to be that every day is a new day, and one day you can be a hero, and the next you can be zero. And I think it's something that every rider has to deal with, and it's just the reality of the sport, and it's difficult, but I also think that makes riders want to work harder and be more dedicated and try to reach for that hero day every single day and to not get yourself too down whenever you have one of those zero days.
Welcome to Practical Horseman's podcast, a show featuring conversations with respected riders, industry leaders, and horse care experts. The show, which runs every other week, is co-hosted by Practical Horseman editors, and our goal is to inform, educate, and inspire. I'm Jocelyn Pierce, and this week's episode is with rising show jumping star Brian Moggre. The 18-year-old began riding when he was just 2, and as he grew older, focused exclusively on the jumper divisions. He contested his first mini Grand Prix at age 11 and his first Grand Prix 2 years later. He wasn't introduced to the hunter and equitation divisions until later in his junior career, where he also excelled. Among his achievements were top 10 placing at the 2016 ASPCA McLean National Championship and the Washington International Horse Show Equitation Final, first place in the 2016 Junior Amateur Owner Jumper Prix at Hit Socrates, and team gold at the 2017 North American Junior Young Rider Championships. In 2018, he won his first major equitation title at the Dover Saddlery USEF Hunter Seat Medal Final, finished second in the McLean Final, and was third at the Washington International Horse Show Equitation Final. Brian began taking the show jumping world by storm in March of 2019 when he and his Westphalian gelding, MTM Vivre Le Reve, also known as Erkel, picked up their first international win at the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup Ocala. Brian was just 17 at the time. His World Cup qualifier success continued into the next season, where he and Erkel won yet another qualifier, this time in Lexington at the prestigious National Horse Show. 1 week later, the pair placed third at the Royal Horse Show in Toronto. Then, in late January, he was awarded the 2020 Lionel Guerrand-Hermès Trophy, presented annually to a young rider in one of the Olympic disciplines who demonstrates the team's values of sportsmanship and horsemanship and shows great potential. Brian's success continued in February when he delivered a double clear performance in his Senior Nations Cup debut. This led the U.S. team to a decisive victory in the FEI Jumping Nations Cup Wellington CSIO 4-star. Then, in March, he finished second with Erkel in the 300,000 CSI 5-star CP Palm Beach Masters Final, right before equestrian sport came grinding to a halt due to the coronavirus pandemic. Brian ended up finishing third in the World Cup Eastern Sub-League rankings, which means he would have been realizing his dreams of competing in the World Cup final next week, which of course has now been canceled. I caught up with Brian at his trainers Ken and Emily Smith's base in Wellington at the beginning of January. During our conversation, Brian shared how he deals with pressure, what he thinks makes him a strong competitor, and his future plans for his riding career. But first, I want to take a moment to thank this episode's sponsor, Cosequin. Cosequin is the #1 veterinarian-recommended joint health supplement brand. With Cosequin Original, Cosequin Optimized with MSM, Cosequin ASU, and Cosequin ASU Plus, there's a formula suited for all horses at any stage of life. Learn more at cosequinequine.com. When performance matters, choose Cosequin. Now, let's jump right into this episode as Brian shares how his love of horses and riding began.
When I started riding, I was almost 3 years old, so I can tell you what my parents have always told me. Since I was a little kid, the house that we first lived in, there was a farm down the street, and when they would take my sister to school, I would always want to stop and see the horses and the ponies and everything. So I'd make them stop almost every single day. And so that happened for about a year or so, and then I got pony ride lessons from that farm, and I was supposed to be 5, but I was 5 for 3 years. I was actually like 2 years old. And I just stuck with it. Me and my siblings, I have a brother and a sister, we all tried it, and I'm the only one that stuck with it. And, ever since then, I've been riding every single day, and I've never known a day where I haven't been riding.
So it's always been kind of like this serious thing for you.
Yeah. And my parents weren't horse people, or they weren't involved with the sport, so we all kind of came into it blind, and it seemed to work out pretty well.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the riders or coaches that kind of influenced you and what you learned from them?
Yeah, my first trainer, who was at that barn, I started riding at when I was 2 years old. I rode with her from then until I was about 12 years old. Her name's Gianna Aycock, and she's based out of Texas. And she took me from obviously pony rides, and then until my first like national Grand Prix, and then she had connections with Mike McCormick and Tracy Fenney of MTM Farm, and I had bought horses from them, and they would help me at horse shows with those certain horses. And then when I was around 12 or 13, I started fully riding with them and traveling with their team. And now in my professional career as an 18-year-old, I ride with Emily Smith and Ken Smith of Ashland Farm. And, I think they've all taught me great things. I have a good foundation from Gianna. Mike and Tracy gave me endless opportunity and, tons of horses to ride. And I, went everywhere and went with them to go see horses they were trying in Europe. They brought me with them and just all over the United States. And I'm super excited to start my new journey with Ken and Emily and see where that takes us.
And I mean, you contested your first Grand Prix when you were very young. What did you say, like 11 or 12?
I did like a mini Prix when I was 11, but probably my first national Grand Prix when I was 13 or 14.
And I mean, obviously, you've been racking up a lot of big wins. I mean, what do you kind of attribute such early success in your career to?
I think hard work and dedication and having a great support system behind me, as well as having the horses to do it. My parents since day one have constantly supported me and given me the world in the sense of riding. And I have 3 fantastic horses. I have MTM Vivre Le Reve, MTM Flutterby, and MTM Los Angeles. And, those horses, as well as all the horses I've had previously, it all just teaches you how to become the rider you want to be. And Leslie Lehman, who takes care of my horses, does a fantastic job. And, she always makes them look their best and feel their best. And I think that plays a huge factor in it as well. And it's just the constant dedication and drive to be serious about the sport, I think, is a huge thing.
And you obviously have a very special relationship with Erkel. Can you talk a little bit about how he came into your life and kind of how you developed that bond and partnership?
Erkel was first imported by Mike and Tracy, and he was 6 or 7 years old. I think he had just turned 7 when they brought him over, and I tried him, I showed him a bit, and I didn't really see the vision that they saw with him. He was a little quirky when he first came, and they knew it was going to be the right fit. So my parents bought him for me, and we really grew together and did everything. Started off in the meter 30s, then did the high juniors, and now is taking me to my first 5-star competitions. And the great thing about it is not only is it my first time jumping these fences, it's his first time as well. So it's really special to share that with a horse, and I think that also plays a huge factor in our relationship.
And what's he like kind of to ride and around the barn?
He is the sweetest horse. I mean, I don't know if it's just me or if it's, but he's super sweet in the barn. He gets a little obnoxious at times. He's quirky and he'll mess with you with his nose, and he likes to get in your business and lick your face, but that's why I love him. But he's just such a gentle, kind horse on the ground, and when you're in the saddle, he's nothing but business, and he's a little bit like me, Whenever we're not in the saddle, it's kind of, lighthearted and playful, and in the saddle, it's go time, and him and I really, feel that together.
And can you talk a little bit about your other 2 horses and what they're like?
My mare, MTM Flutterby, I call her Izzy. I've had her for about 6 years now. Okay. She's seen it all. She's done everything from, I did the low juniors on her. She's done national Grand Prix, jumped young riders, and now she is a great ranking horse for me and do the meter 45 speed classes and get a lot of points in that sense. But I like to say she's like my sister because I can't imagine, having gone through this journey without that horse, and she's one that'll stick with me forever because she is so close to me. And I was 12 years old. She was 7. She's coming 13 now, and yeah, she's like sister to me. And my other horse, MTM Los Angeles, he's coming 8 this year, and he is fantastic. I'm so excited for that horse. He had a great year last year as a 7-year-old. Jumped in 1.45 m in Spruce Meadows clear. He's so game. He's so talented, and I haven't done much with him, but we're excited for the future. And this year being his 8-year-old year, I'm really excited to see where that takes us because I think he is very special.
And when you're competing, do you have a routine before a big class or just a competition in general?
I am very superstitious, and so is Leslie, who helps me. We have a system, we have a routine, and we never stray from it, even down to what shirts I'll wear for certain classes. I have a certain shirt I wear for qualifiers and one that I wear for Grand Prix, and I never like to change anything right before a class, or even if it's the spurs or a spur strap or just any little thing. And so no, I about an hour before the class, Leslie and we both disappear. She goes and gets ready and takes care of the horses, and I go to the ring and focus on myself, and we just have our moments of silence to kind of mentally prepare and get into our zone, and then it's go time. And that system has worked for us thus far, so we're going to continue to do so, and hopefully it stays the same.
And do you get nervous when you're kind of mentally preparing? Is it nerves that you're trying to calm? Or?
Yes, I get very nervous, and that's always been me. It's always been me. I think it's what gives me a competitive edge as well. I think if you're not nervous, you're not serious about it, and whatever the outcome may be. Maybe you're scared to jump the fence height. Maybe you're scared for the result. Scared isn't a great word, but nervous for it, and I think it gives me just that extra edge that I need to perform at my best.
And so when you're taking those quiet moments, that's just you're just kind of trying to calm your nerves.
Yeah, get in the right headspace and be serious and focused and ready to take on the world.
What do you feel makes you a strong competitor? I mean, you're kind of known to be very competitive, a bit of an aggressive competitor. Why do you think that is?
Ever since I was a kid, I've always had a very competitive personality, even with my siblings and what they were doing. My brother played sports. He played soccer and baseball and all those things. And even I would try on the side to learn those things just so I could be better than him, which is it's terrible, but it's true. I've always just been naturally competitive, and I want to be on top of the world. And, to have the support behind me and the mentality that I have, I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen for myself and for my team.
Can you speak a little bit about what your overall training philosophy is?
I really do believe that having a routine, no matter what it is, having a system and sticking to it and repetition is most important. I get into a habit due to repetition, and that's something that I was taught by my old trainers, Mike McCormick. That was the big thing, is we always would repeat, and it's the same for the horses, same for myself, and I think just how it's worked for us and for my horses. We had the same preparation every single time we show. I myself had the same preparation, and it falls into superstition as well, and to not wanting to change anything, and I think after doing the same thing for long enough, it becomes habit for you, and it seems to work out for us.
How do you deal with pressure?
I just have to get in my zone. I have to get in my zone and focus on myself and what the end goal is. I think the most pressure in my life comes from myself. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I just really have to take it in and think to myself of how I want the result to be and be dedicated to it and see the end goal.
And what do you think's your favorite part of the sport, or horses, or riding in general?
It's great because it's like a whole separate world. It's a whole world that not many people know about, and it seems like a huge one, but it's a very close-knit world. you're joined with a group of people who are passionate about what they do and who love horses, and I myself am passionate about what I do, and my horses mean the world to me. So to be able to relate to that with such a broad amount of people, it makes you feel like home in a place that you never really knew existed, and I think that's very special.
And what's maybe the hardest part of the sport?
The hardest part about the sport has got to be that every day is a new day, and one day you can be a hero and the next you can be zero. And I think it's something that every rider has to deal with, and it's just the reality of the sport, and it's difficult, but I also think that makes riders want to work harder and be more dedicated and try to reach for that hero day every single day, and to not get yourself too down whenever you have one of those 0 days. But it's a bit inevitable, and I would say that's the hardest part about the sport, and you just have to be aware of that, and I think that's the most important.
Can you talk about maybe some other interests that you have besides riding, if you have time for other interests?
I like to say that I would like to go to the gym, but I, to this day, have not made that happen. But no, I don't really have much time for any other interest. I love spending time with my family. I try to go home and see them as much as I can. It's difficult with my show schedule, but they also make such an effort to come and see me, which is great. But my main passion is the horses, and I don't ever let that get away from me, and that's just my life.
And you just mentioned you're a professional rider now. You've turned 18. If you didn't follow a riding career, what else do you think you might want to do?
I have no idea what I would want to do. If I weren't a professional rider, I would have probably gone to college and found my career path there and something that really interested me. But without doing that and just going full throttle into the horses, I'm not quite sure what else I'd rather be doing.
I think it's rare for someone who's so young to have such a you know what your passion is, you're driven, you're going to do that.
And that's something I'm very thankful for, is I found something that I was so passionate about at a young age. So I kind of knew my career path since day one, and I know that's something not everybody really has. And again, that's just endless thanks to my parents for always supporting that dream of mine.
Can you talk a little bit about what it was like trying to balance schoolwork with riding at such a high level and how you did that?
Yeah. I started online school in 8th grade was my first year, and it was an online public school, so it essentially followed the same curriculum as a normal public school would, and I still had to do state testing at the end of the year in order to go to my next grade level, and I had to graduate by certain deadlines and everything like that. So I think it was great to have a system like that, so I never let my schoolwork get away from me and had to meet those deadlines and actually have to learn in order to move on to my next year. It was difficult managing the riding and the schoolwork, but without the education and without getting it done, there are no horses. And that's how it's always been for me. And I am guilty of getting behind, but I also would get ahead at times. Indoors is such a difficult time for all of that, and you just have to plan it to work ahead and to plan and to break it up into groups. Maybe you have some downtime before the final season or some downtime afterwards. You have to take advantage of that and really plan your school routine accordingly.
What are can you talk a little bit about some of your goals and plans for your riding career in the future?
I would love to compete on U.S. Nations Cup teams. That's a huge goal of mine. One day hopefully go to the Olympics. A lot of riders' dreams, but it's been mine since I was a little kid, and I would love to make that happen. And just to represent my country on such a large stage. I would love to one day be the #1 ranked rider in the world.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with me, Brian.
Of course, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode, and thanks again for the sponsor of this episode, Cosequin. Join us again in 2 weeks. Upcoming conversations are with the legendary Eric Neve, hunter and jumper rider Hannah Aesop, and equestrian nutritionist Natalie Gabby. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. While you're there, please rate and review the show. I'm Jocelyn Pierce, and you've been listening to the Practical Horseman podcast.